Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a model update video for this 1/6 scale German SDKFZ 222 armored car. Since the last video update, a lot of progress has been made to the model, namely to the model's front fenders as well as other hull fittings. We'll be going over these additions in more detail in this video. And here are the two front fenders, now fully fabricated and are awaiting their primer and coat of base coat. The components here are 100% scratch built. The material that they're made of is sheet metal. The sheet metal components are all soldered and fastened in place with small micro fasteners as they would be on the actual counterpart. There is a left and right hand set. The components are thoroughly detailed inside and out. If we notice the elaborate mounting system for mounting the fender to the side of the armored car. Note the center support, how it has a rigidity piece added to prevent it from bending. The piece works on the model as it does in real life. The rigidity piece really keeps the piece nice and stiff and prevents it from bending and being flimsy. One interesting feature about the fender is the fact that the fenders act as both as a fender as well as a small storage compartment. On the top portion of the fender there is a small little hatch. If you open up this hatch, on the inside there is a small little cubby for the use of storing equipment, tools, and so on. As you can see, the whole cubby goes for the duration of most of the front fender. And once mounted to the armored car, works with the contours of the lower hull, which means it clears the wheel. Also, back to the rigidity straps and the mounting straps, they are affixed to the model with that of some spot welds as well as some real rivets. The rivets that you see here are actually pressed into place and actually support the components and mount them to the piece. This is a mirror image on the opposite side. Moving on to the rearmost portion of the fender, we have here a row of mounting holes. The purpose of these holes are for fasteners to mount on a rubber mud flap, which dangles in this location over here. It is a mirror image on the opposite side. Moving on to other features, both of the hatches feature a small little latch, which would be used to lock it into place so the cubby bin doesn't open up. The version you see on my model here is made out of resin and is non-functional. It's just there for detailing. This is also found on the opposite side. This being the right side fender, it's a lot more simpler in terms of equipment compared to what's found on the left-hand side. First, starting with this component here, this mechanism here is an actual turn signal. Unlike modern cars in which, or even some American vehicles of the time, in which the light, a turn indicator would be used as a light, on these older German soft skin vehicles, there was an actual little arrow that would fold up in this box here. When the driver wants to signal either a left or a right turn, this entire unit here would actuate. The center portion here would actuate and would flip upward, thus showing which direction the guy was going to make a turn. The unit that you see here is specifically made for the 222 armored car. The difference being is that the SDKFZ 250 and other soft skin German indicators had a different back plate. They featured a longer mounting plate with fasteners and two support ribs that came down. The unit that you see here is actually modified from a Panzerwerk.com resin unit. The Panzerwerk version was originally for the SDKFZ 250 and was modified into the 222 unit that we have here. The unit's, again, almost the same, only has a smaller vertical mounting area. The mounting area is more horizontal. It's got 4 bolts. These two triangular style mount, and the power cord emerges from the underside of the unit as opposed to the 250, which emerges from the rear end. The power cable comes out, snakes along the cubby, and then runs along into the inside portion of the armored car. This will be done, of course, once the pieces are added. If we look, the actual cable clamps are also fabricated, and they are again made out of sheet metal and are riveted and soldered into place. Moving to the front portion of the fender takes us to the fender indicator. This is a common feature found on German World War II AFV, from anything from the Opel Blitz to even the SDKFZ 2342 Puma. On either end of the fender, there's a small little mount. Then you have a bent rod with a ball on the end. Typically, these balls here are painted in white, and obviously will be done once the build progresses. Moving towards the left-hand side fender, features the same components that I mentioned before, namely the latch and the turn indicator. However, one interesting portion of the left-hand fender is that of the no-tech light. Like, again, most German AFV, there is a blackout no-tech light found on this corner here of the fender. The component that you see here is made by, again, Panzerwerk.com. The piece is a fantastically detailed piece and is one that is highly recommended. It has the top portion as well as the bottom base. One thing interesting about the 222 is that it's distinctive in having this very ornate brush guard that is around the no-tech light. As you can see, it compasses and protects the no-tech light, however, does not obstruct in any way the front portion of the unit. The brush guard here is all fabricated out of brass and is all soldered together. The little feet that it's mounted to are actually bolted to the tank or to the fender. If I loosen these fasteners, the whole piece will simply pop off. Same goes without saying for the actual mount itself. All of the components that you see here are literally bolted onto the fender, as again, the same manner as they are on the real unit. As for the no-tech light, there is a power cord that emerges from the underneath, to which then that is patched into this wire here for the turn indicator, which will then snake its way and enter again into the armored car's body. Finally, we have here a side view mirror, which is mounted to the indicator rod, like was mentioned, on the opposite side. Again, these components here are made by Panzerwerk.com. They are nicely done and are highly recommended. One modification I did make, though, was to the actual side view mirror pan. The Panzerwerk set does have a resin pan that is nicely detailed, however, is very flat and shallow. On my builds, I like to use a real glass mirror, which is installed in this pan over here. For this pan here, I fabricated this out of resin. It's actually lifted from one of my other components. And the piece is a perfect fit for the small little mirror, of which I've used on several of my builds in the past. And pictures of pieces fixed with these parts are found on the ECA website. And here are the fenders, now completely painted and mounted permanently to the vehicle. The way the fenders are mounted on, like I mentioned before, was that of small straps. This procedure is almost identical to that on the real one, and there are no adhesives that are securing these pieces to the hull. They are held on primarily with fasteners, which gives for a nice, strong, and realistic bond. And here you can see the mounting straps up close. For the straps themselves, they are fabricated out of brass, and they are bolted to the fender via small scale fasteners. The straps are then mounted to the hull via fasteners, as well as some sculpted epoxy weld beads. Now, on the real 222 armored car, these components here are simply just welded to the frame. However, due to the actual weight and support that these pieces are needed for, just the sculpted epoxy welds and adhesives were not going to be enough. So the fasteners were absolutely required in order to keep everything nice and solid. As you can see, there's almost no wiggle with the parts, and the pieces are firmly mounted in place. Moving along the fender, like what was mentioned earlier, is that there's a power conduit for the turn indicator, which on the 222 emerges from the under portion of the fender and runs along the fender storage bin and eventually makes its way into the vehicle near the frame. On its way down, you could see that it also is kept in place via some metal straps. There's another metal strap over here, and if you notice, this strap here is connected to this support rib. This support rib connects the armor plate, which is located on the front, and gives it extra support, and it's bolted to the upper hull. This is a mirror image on the opposite side of the model. And here we can see the fender from the top portion. Here are the armored cubbies that were showcased earlier. Now, at a quick glance, it looks like that this portion here is that of the hull, but that is not the case. This here is actually metal, as well was shown earlier before the pieces were painted. Moving our way down takes us to the bow headlights. The headlights that you see on the model here are a new addition to the EastCoastArmory.com product line. They are intended for the 222 armor car and consist of the components you see here: the base, the arm, the headlight canister, which is molded hollow, and then to top it off, there is a clear resin lens, which gets installed into the actual housing. Once everything is built and painted, the piece will look more complete than you see here. If we also notice, the bell is actually hollow. The purpose for this is in case anyone intends to make their model lighted, you have the cavity to do so. Only thing that you will need to replace though is the arm, as the arm is solid on the set, and to make it wired you will need a hollow tube to substitute it with. Moving to the left hand side of the fender work, which is a lot more intricate compared to the right hand side. Starting with the headlight cluster is the same. The only difference is that on the left-hand side headlight, there is a small little bracket which connects to the vehicle siren. The siren that you see here is made out of resin and is from panzerwork.com. His siren is highly recommended and is assembled basically as is. The only modification I made was the addition of the metal strap which mounts to the headlight arm. Just like what was mentioned on the opposite side, there is some electrical connections which run on the bottom portion of the fender. However, on the left-hand side of the fender, it's a little bit more elaborate in that you have two electrical connections as opposed to just the one. You have the turning signal as well as the no-tech light. Here you can see the wires emerging from the piece. They converge into one single conduit, and then they enter into the hull in the same way. However, there's a bridge point in which the siren wire connects, and then everything funnels its way down. Just like on the other side, there's another support strap for the front plate, which double acts as a mount and a guide for the electrical wire. Moving from the front fenders takes us to the driver's visors. The visors that you see on the model here are comprised out of two sets. The visors on the side are resin castings from Panzerwork. Like the other parts, they are highly recommended. In fact, I have a spare unit over here. The pieces are solid resin, but do have their slit molded in. One modification I made was with a Dremel cutting stone, I went ahead and hollowed out the slit in order for light to actually pass into the vehicle from the inside. Keep in mind this vehicle does have a full interior, so having these slits opened up does improve the accuracy and overall look of the build. This is true for all of the visors that you see here. The two visors in the front are a new addition to the EastCoastArmory.com product line. They come in a set and contain a large visor and a small visor. The small visor has its fastener detailing, as well as both visors have their cast texturing present. On top of the visors takes us to the rain gutter. The 222 has a very distinctive gutter system, which, as the name implies, it prevents water from dripping into the visor and getting into the interior of the vehicle. Keep in mind, on the real vehicle, these here can pivot open, and there's not a whole lot of sealing or O-ring type setup to prevent any moisture from entering inside. This was a common problem on the very early run 222 Armor cars, in which these gutters weren't developed yet. Once the problem with the water was realized, a gutter system was developed, and the version you see here is the finalized gutter variant for the 222 Armor car, as there are several infield and initial production variations. The gutters themselves were all fabricated out of Plastruct L brackets, and were then just cut to shape, assembled, primed, and then mounted to the model. Moving our way to the rear portion of the vehicle takes us to the exhaust. Now, before I can go ahead and actually fabricate the fender work for the rear two wheels, the exhaust manifold system had to have been completed first. The exhaust setup is very distinctive on the 222 and is a unique piece that is exclusively found on this version of the Armor car. And here are the exhausts just prior to installation. The exhausts that you see here are new additions to the EastCoastArmory.com product line. They are specifically designed for the SDKFZ 222 Armor car. This set contains enough components for both exhausts which are found on the vehicle. The sets are in several pieces, however, assembled to what you see here. You have the muffler body itself. You have the end portion, which is distinctive by goosing downward towards the bottom portion of the exhaust body, and then you have the neck, which loops around and moves upward of the body. In addition to this set here, there are also small tubes that are included. The tubes are designed to connect the elbow from the muffler to the elbow that enters into the engine compartment. In addition to the elbow, the set also includes the armored cover, which seals off the elbow and protects it from any type of shrapnel or any type of other debris which can damage the piece. In addition to the resting component, one piece that is not included with the set that I went ahead and fabricated in order to mount the pieces to the armored car is that of the armored car bracket. The bracket that you see here is made out of sheet metal, and it's all soldered together assembly. It gets fastened to the frame via a fastener, just like on the real unit. And the component installs just like it would on the real armored car. There's going to be another brass fastener in this location here, which will clamp down on the body of the muffler, to which then the component can then be affixed to the frame of the model. Just prior to the installation of the pieces, all the components that you see here will be primed, as well as having a base coat of the Panzer Gray added in order to have everything blend in, and will actually aid in the later construction of the vehicle, in that, as you can see, there's a lot of nooks and crannies, and you're not going to be able to get in there once the model has its fenders and the rest of the details are added. Also, as you can see, on the areas where the tubes and the elbow portions connect, weld beads have been sculpted, as were seen on the real 222 I was using as a reference. Again, they are both a mirror image on the opposite sides. With the front tin work and the whole front portion of the vehicle basically completed and out of the way, I can now focus on the rear of the tin work. The rear tin work will include the two fenders, as well as the toolbox and spare tire rack, which is found on the opposite side. More information on this is to follow in an upcoming video update. And with that concludes this project update video for this 1/6 scale German SDKFZ 222 armor car. If If you like this video, stop by and like us on Facebook. And don't forget to check out eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thank you.